Lisa Carter sat at her workstation aboard the USS Liberty, watching the endless stream of data flow across her screens. The Deep Space Monitoring Station floated quietly at the edge of human space, far from Earth and the busy colonies. Her job was simple but boring. Listen for any unusual signals that might come from unknown sources. Most nights brought nothing but cosmic static and the occasional message from passing ships. Tonight felt different. At exactly 0347 hours, her equipment detected something strange. The signal was unlike anything in their databases. It pulsed with mathematical patterns that seemed too complex for natural phenomena. Lisa leaned forward, adjusting her headphones as she tried to make sense of what she was hearing. Captain Jake Morrison was sleeping when the emergency alert woke him. He pulled on his uniform and hurried to the communications center where Lisa waited with a worried expression. She had been working on the signal for 3 hours, running it through every decryption program they had. "What do you have for me, Carter?" Morrison asked, studying the wave patterns on her screen. "Sir, this is definitely artificial. The mathematical structure suggests advanced intelligence, but it's not using any communication protocols we know. The signal is coming from outside our galaxy," Lisa explained, pointing to the tracking data. Morrison called his senior staff to an emergency meeting. Dr. Ryan Brooks arrived first, followed by Commander Amy Walsh from Tactical. The 3 officers gathered around Lisa's workstation as she played the mysterious transmission again. Could this be first contact? Dr. Brooks wondered aloud, his eyes bright with scientific curiosity. "If it is, we need to be very careful about how we respond," Commander Walsh warned. Her military training made her suspicious of unknown contacts. For the next 72 hours, the entire crew worked without rest to decode the alien transmission. Dr. Brooks led teams of scientists in analyzing the mathematical patterns while Lisa worked with her communications specialists to break down the signal structure. Commander Walsh prepared defensive protocols in case the message contained threats. The breakthrough came when Dr. Brooks realized the aliens were using a base 16 mathematical system instead of the human base 10. Once they adjusted their decryption programs, the message began to reveal its secrets. What they found was not what anyone had hoped for. The transmission was a military briefing. Alien voices spoke in clinical tones about something they called the harvest operation. As the translation became clearer, the human crew realized with growing horror that they were listening to invasion plans. The aliens called themselves the hegemony, and they discussed humanity like farmers talking about livestock. They used terms like meat creatures and breeding stock when referring to human beings. The callous way they spoke about human families made Lisa feel sick to her stomach. Genetic analysis shows the Earth specimens will provide adequate material for our breeding programs, one alien voice stated matter-of-factly. The smaller specimens under 5 rotations should be disposed of immediately as they consume resources without providing useful labor. Captain Morrison felt his hands clench into fists as he listened. The aliens were talking about murdering human children as if they were discussing crop management. Dr. Brooks had gone pale, while Commander Walsh's jaw was set in a hard line. The transmission contained detailed intelligence about Earth and the human colonies. The aliens had been watching humanity for decades, studying human behavior and cataloging their settlements. They knew about the research stations, the mining colonies, and even the secret military installations. Worse still, the message included recorded footage from their reconnaissance missions. The crew watched in stunned silence as alien cameras showed human families going about their daily lives. Children playing in parks, couples walking hand in hand, elderly people sitting on porches, all unaware they were being observed by predators. The aliens found human behavior amusing. They laughed at what they called emotional displays and commented on how humans showed interesting panic responses when threatened. One voice suggested capturing some humans alive specifically to study these reactions. The creatures show remarkable attachment to their offspring, an alien observer noted. This weakness can be exploited during the collection process. Lisa had to leave the room twice to be sick. The casual cruelty in the alien voices was unlike anything she had ever heard. These beings spoke about torture and murder the way humans might discuss the weather. The military details were equally terrifying. The hegemony fleet would arrive in 6 months with 47 ships carrying invasion forces. They planned to begin with orbital bombardment of major cities, followed by ground troops to secure useful specimens for transport to processing facilities. The aliens had done this before. The transmission referenced 16 other species they had already harvested across the galaxy. Each conquest followed the same pattern: observe, catalog, attack, and collect. The hegemony had been expanding their empire for thousands of years. Commander Walsh studied the tactical information with professional interest, despite her disgust. The alien technology was centuries ahead of anything humans possessed. Their ships carried weapons that could destroy entire cities, and their ground forces used equipment that made human military gear look primitive. They're not planning a war, Walsh realized. They're planning a roundup. The transmission ended with coordinates and a precise timeline. The hegemony fleet would arrive at Earth on a specific date, begin bombardment of predetermined targets, and complete the harvest within 72 hours. They expected no significant resistance. Captain Morrison stared at the now silent communications equipment. In his 20 years of military service, he had never felt such a combination of rage and helplessness. The enemy was more powerful than anything humanity had ever faced, and they were coming to treat human beings like animals. "Sir, what are our orders?" Lisa asked quietly. Morrison looked at his crew. These people had just learned that an alien empire planned to enslave or murder everyone they had ever loved. Their faces showed shock, fear, and something else, a cold anger that seemed to be growing stronger by the minute. "We warn Earth," Morrison said finally, "and then we figure out how to make these aliens regret they ever heard of humanity." Dr. Brooks was already working on detailed analysis of the alien technology, looking for weaknesses. Commander Walsh was developing tactical assessments based on the enemy capabilities they had observed. Lisa was monitoring all frequencies for additional intelligence. None of them spoke about surrender or evacuation. They had heard the aliens laugh about human emotional responses and call humanity weak. The hegemony was about to learn that they had made a serious mistake in their assessment. The crew of the USS Liberty had just discovered that humanity was being hunted. Now they had 6 months to become the hunters instead. Captain Morrison sent the decoded transmission to Earth Command immediately, but the response was frustrating and slow. Politicians argued about whether the message was real, while military leaders debated strategies that completely missed the point. Some officials suggested diplomatic contact with the aliens, apparently not understanding that the hegemony saw humans as livestock, rather than equals. The crew of the USS Liberty could not forget what they had heard. Dr. Brooks discovered more alien transmissions hidden in the background noise of space. Each new message revealed more horrifying details about the hegemony's empire and their treatment of conquered species. The aliens had perfected their harvesting process over millennia. They would arrive at a planet, disable the major cities with orbital bombardment, then send collection teams to gather the surviving population. Useful specimens went to breeding facilities or slave labor camps while the rest were eliminated for efficiency. Lisa Carter found herself unable to sleep or eat properly. The alien voices haunted her dreams, laughing about human children and discussing torture methods like scientists comparing research techniques. She began monitoring every communication frequency obsessively, searching for more intelligence about the enemy. Her colleagues worried about Lisa's mental state, but her obsession led to a crucial discovery. While analyzing the alien communication patterns, she found something the hegemony had overlooked in their planning. They had a fatal weakness in their thinking about humanity. The aliens viewed humans as just another primitive species, like all the others they had conquered. Their files contained detailed studies of 16 different intelligent species, all of which had surrendered when faced with superior technology. The hegemony expected the same rational response from humanity. Commander Walsh began developing defensive scenarios, but she quickly realized conventional military thinking would not work. The aliens possessed technology centuries ahead of human capabilities. Their ships could destroy entire fleets before human weapons could even target them effectively. However, Walsh noticed something important in the alien tactical discussions. Every previous conquest had followed the same pattern, because every previous enemy had been logical. When faced with certain defeat, these species had surrendered to minimize casualties and preserve their populations. The aliens had never encountered a species that fought harder when protecting their families. They had never faced an enemy driven by emotional fury, rather than logical calculation. The hegemony's entire military doctrine was based on rational opponents who would surrender when resistance became mathematically impossible. Dr. Brooks intercepted transmissions discussing the alien processing facilities. These installations were designed to sort captured beings by usefulness: strong specimens for labor, intelligent ones for technical work, and attractive ones for breeding programs. The facilities included medical laboratories where alien scientists would experiment on human subjects to understand their biology better. The more the crew learned, the more their fear transformed into something else. The initial shock and terror were giving way to cold, calculating rage. They were no longer thinking about survival. They were thinking about revenge. Lisa discovered recordings of previous harvests. The aliens kept detailed documentation of their conquests, including footage of the final moments when each species realized their situation was hopeless. The hegemony found these recordings entertaining and often reviewed them for amusement. The crew watched in horror as intelligent beings begged for mercy that never came. They saw families torn apart, children separated from parents, and entire civilizations reduced to cargo manifest numbers. The aliens showed no emotion during these scenes except occasional laughter at particularly desperate pleas. Captain Morrison realized that Earth Command was not taking the threat seriously enough. The politicians were still debating the authenticity of the transmissions while military planners developed defensive strategies based on human opponents rather than technologically superior aliens against direct orders. Morrison decided to take action. He began transmitting the alien broadcasts to every human colony and military installation within communication range. If the government would not act quickly enough, he would make sure every human in space understood what was coming. The response was immediate and explosive. Within hours of receiving the transmissions, human settlements throughout the solar system began mobilizing for war. The casual cruelty in the alien voices had the same effect on every human who heard them, converting fear into burning. Rich Commander Walsh monitored the military communications as human forces began coordinating their response. Ships from different nations and colonies started operating as a single fleet. Resource sharing became automatic. Territorial disputes disappeared overnight, and every human installation became part of the same defensive network. On Mars Colony, Administrator Kevin Turner called an emergency assembly after hearing the alien transmissions. Within 6 hours, every civilian facility had been converted to military production. Mining equipment became weapons manufacturing tools, agricultural domes became barracks, and research laboratories began developing new ways to kill aliens. The Europa Research Station reported similar transformations. Scientists who had spent their careers studying peaceful applications of technology were now working around the clock to create weapons of mass destruction. Dr. Helen Price, the station commander, personally led teams developing biological weapons specifically designed to target alien physiology. The Jupiter Defense Platform became the coordination center for a fleet that grew larger every day. Ships that had been carrying cargo or passengers were being retrofitted with weapons systems. Even small civilian craft were being equipped with improvised missiles and kinetic projectiles. Lisa intercepted new alien transmissions that showed the hegemony was monitoring human communications but completely misunderstanding what they were observing. The aliens interpreted the increased activity as typical prey panic responses. They had seen similar behavior from other species before conquest and expected it to fade into resigned acceptance. The hegemony commanders were confident in their superiority and amused by human defensive preparations. They discussed the quaint, primitive weapons humans were building and joked about how quickly the resistance would collapse once the real attack began. Dr. Brooks made a breakthrough while analyzing the alien reconnaissance footage. The hegemony ships used energy shields calibrated to deflect the types of weapons their previous enemies had possessed. However, these shields had specific vulnerabilities to kinetic impacts at certain frequencies. This discovery led to the development of new projectile weapons designed to exploit the alien shield weaknesses. More importantly, humans began mass-producing these weapons at a scale the aliens could not comprehend. Where other species had built dozens or hundreds of defensive weapons, humanity was building millions. The crew of the USS Liberty had become the center of humanity's intelligence-gathering operation. Every new alien transmission was analyzed for tactical information, and the results were shared with every human military unit in the solar system. Captain Morrison realized that something fundamental had changed in humanity's response to the threat. The species that aliens dismissed as emotional and primitive was using those same emotions as weapons. Fear was becoming determination, desperation was becoming innovation, and love for their families was becoming an unshakable resolve to fight. The hegemony expected a harvest. Instead, they were about to face something they had never encountered in their thousands of years of conquest: an entire species weaponized by righteous fury. The alien transmissions continued to spread throughout human space despite government attempts to control the information. Captain Morrison had started something that could not be stopped. Every human settlement now knew exactly what the hegemony planned to do to their families and friends. The response was unlike anything in human history. Mars colony transformed overnight from a peaceful research and mining operation into a fortress world. Administrator Kevin Turner coordinated the conversion of every facility on the planet. Mining tunnels became weapons storage areas. Agricultural domes were converted to ammunition factories, and civilian transport vehicles were rebuilt as military assault craft. The transformation went beyond simple military preparation. Martian children as young as 10 volunteered for support roles, learning to operate communication equipment and maintain weapon systems. Elderly colonists who had never held weapons in their lives began training with rifles and explosives. Every human on Mars understood that surrender meant slavery or death for everyone they loved. Dr. Helen Price led the scientific response from Europa Station. Her research teams had abandoned their peaceful projects to focus entirely on developing ways to kill aliens. The biological weapons laboratory worked around the clock, using genetic information gleaned from the hegemony reconnaissance footage to create toxins specifically designed to target alien physiology. The Europa teams made several breakthrough discoveries. Alien blood chemistry was vulnerable to certain Earth-based bacteria that would be harmless to humans but fatal to the invaders. They also developed airborne agents that would attack alien respiratory systems while leaving human lungs unaffected. Dr. Price personally oversaw the most ambitious project on a weapon that would turn the alien ship's own life support systems against them. By introducing microscopic agents into their air recycling systems, human boarding parties could potentially kill entire alien crews without firing a shot. Commander Ben Hughes coordinated the space-based defenses from Jupiter platform. The defense fleet had grown from a few dozen patrol ships to thousands of vessels of every size and type. Cargo haulers carried missile batteries, passenger liners had been converted to troop transports, and even small personal craft were equipped with kamikaze systems. The unified response amazed Hughes and every other military professional in human space. Ships from Earth, Mars, the asteroid belt, and the outer colonies operated as a single coordinated force. There were no territorial disputes, no arguments about resource allocation, and no conflicts between different national militaries. The alien threat had created something that decades of diplomacy had failed to achieve: true human unity. The aliens monitoring human communications remained confident in their superiority. Hegemony intelligence reports described the human response as typical prey preparation behavior, and compared it to similar activities they had observed from other species before harvest. The alien commanders found human defiance amusing rather than concerning. This confidence was exactly what human military planners had hoped for. Commander Walsh developed a strategy based on the alien assumption that humans would behave like their previous enemies. Every human defensive preparation was designed to reinforce the hegemony belief that this would be another easy conquest. The decoy cities were the centerpiece of human deception. Major population centers on Earth and Mars were quietly evacuated, while leaving all external signs of normal activity. The aliens would target these cities for orbital bombardment, not knowing they were attacking empty buildings filled with hidden weapons platforms. Lisa Carter had become the primary coordinator for intelligence gathering from the USS Liberty. Her intercepts of alien communications revealed the complete hegemony battle plan. The attack would begin with bombardment of 27 major cities, followed by landing forces to secure government centers and transportation hubs. The aliens expected total victory within 72 hours. Their previous conquests had never lasted longer than a few days because rational species surrendered once they understood the hopelessness of their situation. The hegemony had no experience fighting an enemy that refused to be rational about defeat. Dr. Brooks made the most important discovery when he found the aliens' detailed tactical assessments of human capabilities. The hegemony had studied human military equipment and dismissed it as primitive and ineffective. Their shields were calibrated to stop energy weapons like lasers and plasma cannons, not the kinetic projectiles humans were mass-producing. This revelation led to the development of the Rage rounds, specially designed kinetic projectiles that could penetrate alien shields. Human industrial capacity, normally used for consumer goods and peaceful construction, was converted entirely to weapons production. The scale of manufacturing would have seemed impossible to any previous civilization. Earth itself had become the ultimate fortress. General Linda Shaw coordinated planetary defenses that turned every major city into a trap, and every rural area into a killing field. Highways were rigged with explosives, bridges were prepared for demolition, and underground tunnel systems connected defensive positions across entire continents. The space-based mining operations provided unlimited raw materials for weapons production. Asteroid mining platforms were converted to kinetic bombardment systems, capable of launching massive projectiles at alien ships. The same technology used to move ore could accelerate chunks of metal to devastating velocities. Admiral Rick Stone commanded the Luna Defense Grid from a fortified base on the moon's far side. The lunar installations included the most powerful weapons humans had ever built: electromagnetic launchers that could fire projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. These weapons were powerful enough to damage even heavily shielded alien vessels. Human culture itself had transformed in response to the threat. Art became propaganda encouraging resistance, music became war songs, and every story told focused on victory against impossible odds. Children learned mathematics through ballistics calculations and studied chemistry by understanding explosive reactions. The transformation was not just military, but psychological. Humans had discovered something about themselves that the aliens completely failed to understand. When protecting their families, humans did not become more afraid as the situation became more desperate. They became more dangerous. Commander Walsh studied reports from across human space and realized that humanity had achieved something unprecedented. An entire species had been militarized not by force or government decree, but by shared fury at the threat to their loved ones. Every human settlement had become a fortress. Every human had become a soldier, and every piece of human technology had become a weapon. The hegemony expected to harvest a species of primitive meat creatures. Instead, they were about to encounter something that had never existed in galactic history: an entire civilization, unified by rage and armed with the industrial high capacity of multiple worlds. Captain Morrison received the final intelligence reports. As the alien fleet approached the edge of human space, the hegemony ships were exactly as powerful as their transmissions had indicated. Under normal circumstances, they would represent an unstoppable force against which human resistance would be suicide. But these were not normal circumstances. The aliens had made one critical error in their assessment of humanity. They had assumed that fear would make humans weaker when it actually made them stronger. The broadcast that was meant to announce humanity's doom had instead awakened something the galaxy had never seen before. 2 months remained before the hegemony fleet would arrive, and humanity had completed its transformation from a peaceful spacefaring species into something the galaxy had never seen before. Every human settlement had become a fortress, every human had become a warrior, and every piece of technology had been converted into an instrument of war. Colonel Danny Foster commanded the Mars Defense Initiative from a bunker deep beneath the planet's surface. The entire world had been converted into a massive weapons platform. Mountains had been hollowed out to house artillery batteries. Valleys had been turned into killing fields with overlapping fields of fire. And every settlement had been rebuilt as a fortress designed to make invaders pay in blood for every meter of ground. The Martian population had embraced their new reality with determination that amazed even experienced military officers. Civilians who had never seen combat trained with weapons every day. Scientists who had spent their careers studying peaceful applications of technology now designed increasingly creative ways to kill aliens. Even children too young to fight served as messengers and equipment operators. Foster walked through the command center, where hundreds of people coordinated the defense of an entire planet. The walls were covered with tactical displays showing weapon positions, supply routes, and defensive plans. Every detail had been calculated to maximize alien casualties while forcing the invaders to fight for every objective. The Mars defense plan was based on a simple principle: make the aliens regret every decision to continue fighting. The surface cities were traps filled with explosives and hidden weapons. The underground tunnels were designed as mazes where human defenders could attack from multiple directions, while remaining protected from orbital bombardment. On Earth, General Linda Shaw oversaw the most complex military operation in human history. The planet's entire industrial capacity had been converted to war production on a scale that would have been impossible without complete civilian cooperation. Factories that once made household goods now produced ammunition. Research facilities that studied medicine now developed toxins, and transportation systems had been rebuilt to move weapons and soldiers. The Earth defense grid represented humanity's most desperate gambit. Admiral Rick Stone coordinated thousands of ships stationed throughout the solar system, from massive dreadnoughts built in the asteroid belt to single-pilot fighters constructed in orbital shipyards. Every vessel was crewed by volunteers who understood they were not expected to survive the coming battle. Stone studied the tactical displays from his command center on Luna Base. The IM defensive plan was ambitious beyond anything ever attempted. Humanity would fight the aliens at every possible location simultaneously. Space-based weapons would engage the invasion fleet. Planetary defenses would target landing forces, and ground troops would make the aliens fight for every building and street. The human strategy was based on psychological warfare as much as military tactics. The aliens expected a quick victory, followed by the systematic processing of human survivors. Instead, they would face an enemy that fought harder as the situation became more desperate, forcing the hegemony to reconsider whether harvesting humanity was worth the cost. Dr. Ryan Brooks led the Combined Science Initiative from a research complex hidden beneath the Antarctic ice. His teams had made breakthrough discoveries about alien technology and biology, based on intelligence gathered from their transmissions. The most important finding was that hegemony technology was designed to fight enemies who used energy weapons and logical tactics. The aliens had never faced projectile weapons fired by opponents who preferred emotional warfare to rational strategy. Their shields could deflect laser beams and plasma bolts but were vulnerable to kinetic impacts at specific frequencies. Their armor was designed to protect against precision strikes, but could not handle the massive volume of fire humans were preparing to deliver. Brooks had also discovered critical weaknesses in alien biology. The hegemony had evolved on a world with different atmospheric composition and gravity. Human-designed biological weapons could target their respiratory and circulatory systems while being harmless to Earth-based life forms. The research teams had developed weapons specifically designed to exploit every alien weakness they had identified. Rage rounds were kinetic projectiles that could penetrate alien shields. Bioweapons were tailored to attack alien physiology. Electronic warfare systems were programmed to disrupt alien communications and navigation. Lisa Carter had become the coordinator for intelligence gathering across human space. From her position aboard the USS Liberty, she monitored alien communications and coordinated information sharing between all human military units. Her work had revealed the complete hegemony battle plan and tactical doctrine. The aliens remained confident in their superiority despite observing human preparations. Their transmissions showed amusement at what they called primitive defensive efforts and amusing attempts at resistance. The hegemony commanders compared human activities to similar behaviors they had observed from other species before conquest. This alien confidence was exactly what human planners had hoped for. Every defensive preparation was designed to reinforce hegemony assumptions about quick victory. The aliens would discover their mistake only when it was too late to change their approach. Captain Morrison coordinated the deception operations from his position aboard the Liberty. The fake communications traffic made human defenses appear weaker than they actually were. The decoy installations gave aliens attractive targets that were actually elaborate traps. The apparent civilian panic was carefully orchestrated to make the hegemony believe their psychological warfare was working. The final human preparations revealed the true scale of their response to the alien threat. Mining operations had been converted to produce kinetic projectiles at industrial scale. Transportation systems had been rebuilt to move weapons and ammunition. Communication networks had been hardened to continue operating under attack. Commander Amy Walsh reviewed the tactical situation from her war room deep beneath Mars' surface. Human forces were positioned throughout the solar system, with overlapping fields of fire and mutual support. Every defensive position was designed to survive initial alien attacks and continue fighting even when isolated from command and control. The psychological transformation of humanity was as important as the military preparations. Humans had discovered that protecting their families made them fight harder, rather than more cautiously. The alien threat had awakened something in human nature that the hegemony had never encountered. In their thousands of years of conquest, human children learned about the coming battle through stories that emphasized courage and sacrifice. Adults trained for combat while maintaining their normal jobs and family responsibilities. Elderly people who could not fight directly supported the war effort through manufacturing and logistics. The unity of human response amazed even the military professionals coordinating the defense. There were no territorial disputes between nations, no arguments about resource allocation, and no conflicts between different military services. The alien threat had created perfect cooperation among people who had been enemies just months before. Dr. Helen Price completed the final biological weapons tests at Europa Station. Her teams had developed agents that would turn alien life support systems into delivery mechanisms for human-designed toxins. Boarding parties could potentially eliminate entire alien crews without direct combat. The space-based defenses were ready for a battle unlike anything in galactic history. Human ships were positioned to engage alien vessels at maximum range, while ground-based weapons provided supporting fire. The defensive plan called for coordinated attacks that would overwhelm alien point defenses through sheer volume of incoming projectiles. As the hegemony fleet approached the outer edge of human space, final intelligence reports confirmed that the aliens remained confident in quick victory. Their communication showed no awareness that humanity was anything more than another primitive species awaiting harvest. The aliens were about to learn that they had made a fundamental error in their assessment of human nature. The broadcast that revealed their plans had not terrified humanity into submission. It had awakened something the galaxy had never seen before. The hegemony fleet arrived exactly on schedule. 47 massive ships carrying invasion forces intended for multiple star systems. Fleet Commander Zektar reviewed the tactical situation from his flagship's command center, confident that this harvest would proceed like all the others. The primitive species had shown typical defensive preparations, but nothing that could seriously threaten technologically superior forces. Zektar ordered the standard bombardment pattern, targeting the major population centers that hegemony intelligence had identified as critical to human civilization. Earth, Mars, and the larger colonial settlements would be disabled first, followed by systematic collection of surviving specimens. The first bombardment ships moved into position over Earth and opened fire on New York, London, Tokyo, and 24 other major cities. The orbital strikes hit their targets perfectly, creating massive explosions that should have eliminated human command and control capabilities. Instead, the aliens discovered humanity's first surprise. The cities were empty except for automated systems designed to simulate normal activity. As the bombardment ships revealed their positions by firing on decoy targets, hidden weapons platforms throughout the solar system opened fire simultaneously. The rage rounds punched through alien shields like they did not exist. 3 bombardment ships took critical damage in the opening minutes as human kinetic projectiles tore through their hulls. Zektar watched in shock as vessels that had seemed invulnerable were crippled by primitive projectile weapons. Captain Morrison broadcast a message to the hegemony fleet from his position aboard the USS Liberty. His voice was calm but carried an edge of cold fury that made even experienced alien warriors pause. You came here to harvest us like animals. Instead, you have awakened something you do not understand. We are humanity, and we do not forgive. The battle that followed defied every expectation the aliens had developed about primitive species. Human ships did not retreat when damaged. They accelerated toward alien vessels for ramming attacks. Human fighters did not break formation when outnumbered. They coordinated suicide runs, Against alien command ships, Admiral Rick Stone led the Luna Defense Force in a maneuver that sacrificed 60% of his fleet to destroy the Hegemony flagship. As his own ship was torn apart by alien weapons, he transmitted his final message to the enemy fleet. "Tell your empire what happens when you threaten human children." The explosion that destroyed Stone's ship and the alien flagship lit up the dark side of Earth like a second sun. Human defenders throughout the solar system saw the flash and understood that their admiral had traded his life and his ships to eliminate the enemy command. Vessel Zektar transferred his flag to a secondary command ship, but the loss of the flagship had disrupted hegemony coordination. The aliens discovered that human defensive positions were interconnected in ways their intelligence had not detected. Destroying one weapons platform caused others to activate, creating overlapping fields of fire that trapped alien ships in killing zones. On Mars, Colonel Danny Foster implemented Doctrine Rage as alien landing forces attempted to secure the planet. The hegemony troops found that every building was booby-trapped, every tunnel led to an ambush, and every human they encountered fought to the death rather than surrender. The aliens had expected to fight an enemy that would retreat when faced with superior firepower. Instead, they found themselves fighting opponents who became more dangerous as their situation became more desperate. Human defenders who ran out of ammunition used improvised weapons. Wounded humans who could not fight directly guided remote-controlled explosives into alien positions. Foster coordinated the defense from his underground command center, watching as human tactics confused and frustrated the alien invaders. The hegemony forces were trained to fight rational enemies who followed logical military doctrine. They had no experience with opponents who used emotion as a tactical advantage. Dr. Helen Price's biological weapons proved devastatingly effective when human boarding parties attacked captured alien ships. The toxins were deployed through ventilation systems, turning the ship's own life support against their crews. Alien boarding parties found themselves fighting, not just human defenders but an environment specifically designed to kill them. The space battle reached its climax when Commander Amy Walsh led a boarding action against the alien command ship. Instead of trying to capture the vessel, her team destroyed the ship's central computer while broadcasting the battle footage across the galaxy. For the first time, other enslaved species saw their hegemony masters bleeding and dying. Walsh's sacrifice had consequences far beyond the immediate battle. The footage of humans killing hegemony warriors spread through underground resistance networks across the galaxy. Species that had been enslaved for centuries began to believe that rebellion might be possible. The psychological warfare proved as important as the military tactics. The aliens had conquered 16 species by demonstrating overwhelming superiority and forcing rational surrender. Humans refused to be rational about impossible odds, fighting harder as their losses mounted. Dr. Ryan Brooks coordinated the final phase of human resistance from his Antarctic command center. The biological weapons had weakened alien crews, while kinetic bombardment had damaged their ships. Human ground forces were making the invaders pay an unacceptable price for every objective. The turning point came when human defenders on Europa Station successfully captured an intact alien ship. The vessel's computer contained detailed information about hegemony military capabilities and the locations of their other operations throughout the galaxy. More importantly, it contained communication codes that allowed humans to broadcast messages to enslaved populations on distant worlds. Lisa Carter coordinated the intelligence breakthrough from aboard the USS Liberty. The captured alien databases revealed that the hegemony empire was not as stable as their propaganda claimed. Several enslaved species had been planning rebellions but lacked the courage to act without hope of success. The footage of human resistance provided that hope. Within hours of the first broadcasts, rebellions began on 12 different worlds. The hegemony found themselves fighting multiple wars simultaneously as their enslaved populations rose up inspired by human defiance. Zektar realized that his harvest operation had become a disaster. The human resistance was costing more ships and troops than the entire species would be worth as slaves. Worse, the rebellion was spreading to other worlds, threatening the stability of the entire hegemony empire. The alien commander ordered a full retreat, but human forces had anticipated this possibility. Admiral Stone's sacrifice had damaged the hegemony fleet's jump capabilities, trapping many ships in human space. The aliens who had come to harvest humanity found themselves being hunted by their intended prey. Captain Morrison coordinated the final assault from his battle-damaged ship. Human forces throughout the solar system focused their remaining firepower on the retreating alien fleet. The message was clear. None of the invaders would escape to report back to their empire. The battle ended with the complete destruction of the hegemony fleet. Not a single alien ship survived to return home. More importantly, the battle footage continued to spread throughout the galaxy, inspiring rebellions that would ultimately destroy the hegemony empire. Commander Walsh's final transmission before her ship was destroyed became legendary throughout human space. They wanted to harvest us like livestock. Today we taught them that some species cannot be enslaved. The aftermath of the battle revealed the true scope of humanity's achievement. Within 5 years, 17 formerly enslaved species had achieved independence, all following tactical doctrines based on humanity's emotional warfare principles. The hegemony empire, which had ruled the galaxy for millennia, collapsed as their former slaves learned that anger could overcome superior technology. Captain Morrison's final log entry summarized the transformation that had occurred. They sent us a broadcast announcing our enslavement. Instead, they taught us that there are worse things in the universe than death. Today, we became something new, not just the defenders of Earth, but the liberators of an entire galaxy. Humanity emerged from the war forever changed. They were no longer a species concerned only with their own survival, but had become the galaxy's beacon of hope for the oppressed. The broadcast that was meant to announce their doom had instead awakened something that would reshape the balance of power. Throughout the stars, the hegemony had ruled through fear and superior technology for thousands of years. They never understood that some species fight harder when they are afraid. Not for themselves, but for the people they love. That misunderstanding cost them everything.